Good morning. Many years ago when I was at theological college, I did a course called Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE. It was a course where 20 of us, 20 students, were sent into Royal North Shore Hospital over a 3-month period. And we were to care for patients and families and staff, to have pastoral conversations, some hard in the midst of deep crisis and some more gentle. But as part of the program, we're in the group, and we would come for group sessions of training and learning and so on. But we're also divided into smaller groups. I was in a group with 6 students and a supervisor. Val, our supervisor, was a deeply experienced and skillful practitioner. Val quickly understood in each person the strengths and weaknesses, the areas that needed growth. And she would probe and provoke and confront and challenge. She had 3 months to dig in and expose us, open us up to the delusions and fears and weaknesses and stuff to help us grow. There were 2 people in our group, 2 women who was their 4th consecutive unit of CPE, and they'd been some really difficult issues, dealing with some really confronting stuff in their own lives. And they weren't ready to slow down. This was their last unit and they were going to finish well. And they brought that to our little group session. Each week each person would present a written report on an experience, a conversation or pastoral encounter we'd had in the hospital. And we would present it to the group, and the group would respond and give feedback for an hour. It was a deeply confronting session. Why did you say that? What were you thinking? Who were you in this moment? Why are you pretending to be someone else? What's this about? Where's God in this? Where's your faith? What are you thinking? Every little thing we said or did, what we wrote, was picked up and challenged and broken open. And we were confronted with things about ourselves. And we get defensive and fight back until we realised there was truth in what they said. And that truth needed to be embraced. Later in the supervision sessions with Val one-on-one, she would open these things up and we discuss and explore, and she would do it in a firm but often gentle way. Where she needed to be tough and hard and challenging and push, she would. Where she needed to back off and just give us space to own this experience, this learning, she would. Her words were about truth. She didn't come to bring peace to the group. The groups were really volatile sometimes, but always pastoral. There was always a sense of care that you were held in this group, and what the group was doing with you and for you was for your own good. And we would back off when we sensed that there needed to be a bit of space, or Val would intervene and hold the group. By the end of the course, we likened her to a surgeon with a scalpel. She would glance boils that were more external, but sometimes she'd go in and remove that disease wounded part of us and expose it to the light, to healing, to allow us to grow in new ways. She didn't come to bring peace, but the truth that would set us free and ultimately bring a deeper sense of peace. And that's what the words of Jesus this week speak to me about. Really harsh words that Matthew's story brings. The disciples are about to go out and confront the world with love and peace and healing. But Jesus says, you're not going to be accepted everywhere. In fact, if you follow me, you're going to be persecuted. Look at me. Look at what they do to me. The powers that be don't like what I say or do. And Matthew, of course, writing decades after Jesus' death and resurrection, the cross is central to this, that they persecuted him and put him on a cross. And so Matthew's words, interpreting decades later, are saying to this community of his people who are experiencing persecution and suffering and oppression from all sorts of places and forces, and life is not easy, that it wasn't easy for Jesus. And that Jesus, the risen Christ, the Spirit of God, is with you in the midst of this and will sustain you. The truth that you bring from Christ will threaten the world. Just as Jesus' words threatened those who had power, those who had a nice, comfortable, easy faith, those who held power and prosperity and lived nice lives, whilst others suffered, others went hungry, others endured persecution. His words confronted and challenged and brought these people in and declared God's love for them. And these people hated it. And there was rejection and retaliation and ultimately the cross. And Matthew in this story is saying, you can't expect any different. Because Jesus' words will divide equally today as they did back then. And in his words he says, do you think I came to bring peace on earth? I didn't. I came to bring a sword. And my words will divide families and communities and nations. And these words of Jesus are not prescriptive that I come to divide and conflict and whatever, but simply the truth that I bring will bring division and conflict because people will reject it. People will hate it. And we see that in our world. It's not comfortable to be a different kind of a person in America at the moment. People of a different ethnicity, people who have a difference in gender or sexual expression, or people who are different in some way, can be isolated, locked up, or kicked out. And that happens across our world. People are hated simply because of who they are. The Jewish people in Nazi Germany in the Second World War, in the prisoner of war camps, death camps, and in parts of the world today, to be Jewish is to be hated. But equally in other parts, it's to be Islamic is to be hated, or Christian, or Buddhist, or whatever faith, or culture, or ideology. There are differences and people react against things that are different. And there are powers and forces that hold and oppress and divide. And Jesus comes into this world that's divided and hating each other and defending and jealous and fearful and controlling, and speaks of love, gentle, powerful love. Love that embraces that which is different, listens, develops relationship and reconciliation, brings hope and peace. Peace not through everything's nice, isn't it lovely, but peace through truth-telling and confession and reconciliation. And that's what his ministry is about. And to be a person who brings reconciliation, to go into the places where there is conflict and hatred or division or persecution, and to confront the powers that be, those who control the wealth, those who control the power, those who control the message, the story, and say you're wrong. You're not true. To say you need to give up your money and share it with those who don't have enough. You need to use your power for good, not oppression. People resist and hate it. When you confront Donald Trump, he gets angry and walks out. When you confront Vladimir Putin, he kills you or blocks your way. This is the way of many of our world powers and leaders. And Jesus confronts this. But he says, if you live in my way, you're going to be resisted. There'll be people who hate you. People who don't listen to what you say and reject you. And that's how they treated me. But remember, I am with you. And Debbie Thomas, a commentator, speaks about this passage. And in the beginning of a commentary, she talks about the things we fear in the world, the things in our lives, for us, cost of living, warfare, violence in the streets, or politics that's going awry and bad, or whatever it is. There's lots of things to fear, illness and disease. But at the end she says, whilst there's lots of things we're afraid of, the thing that Jesus points us to is the fear of living an unfulfilled, bland, non-life. A life that is just nice and comfortable and easy, that never confronts the truth of who we are or the world in which we live. A life that is bland, because Jesus invites us to live, to go into the places that are risky and dangerous and conflicted with the peace and hope of love, and to proclaim it and to live it and to see what happens in the power of God's Spirit. There'll be rejection and hatred and violence, but there'll also be the stories of life. And all of us that went through that CPE course came out more whole. Not completely whole, not fully healed and whole, but more whole than when we went in. It was uncomfortable, it was confronting, it was challenging, and parts difficult. But on the whole, it was life-giving. This is what Jesus invites us into. And it's not easy. And he warns us that the life of faith is risky. The life of faith will be hard. It takes courage. But it's a life that is filled with reality, with truth, with energy, with passion. It's a life that's lived. What about you? Will you come on this journey with Jesus?